This week on the Aviators, we take a close look at one of the most overlooked parts of an aircraft, its tires. Then check out the view from the tallest air traffic control tower in the world. And finally, we examine one big reason why flying is as safe as it is, with a lesson in maintenance at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Of all the components that make up an aircraft's physical being, from its fuselage and wings to its propellers and engine, perhaps the unsung hero of the aircraft's ability to safely deliver its passengers to their destination is one of its least conspicuous components: the aircraft tires. Think about it. The largest of commercial aircraft can weigh in at over 600 tons, or 1.2 million pounds, at takeoff. And upon landing, that same aircraft, although lighter, can still weigh almost 400 tons, and will go from being in the air one moment to hitting the ground and rushing down the runway at 150 miles an hour the next. Regardless of the scenario, there's really one main component upon which that aircraft inevitably finds itself perched, put into the simplest of terms, atop a few relatively tiny ring-shaped tubes made of rubber. Considering the altogether Herculean feat with which an aircraft's tires are tasked, it seems quite fitting to learn that when compared to the predominantly automated process by which hundreds of thousands of automotive tires are produced in a single factory each day, each individual aircraft tire is largely handmade by highly trained technicians.
And instead of producing 100,000 tires of one dimension, you're producing 20 or 30. So they're almost all individual works of art that make it really difficult to automate the process in any kind of economically meaningful way.
Lee Bartholomew is a customer support engineer for Michelin's aircraft tire division. Beyond the already impressive level of craftsmanship applied toward the creation of each tire, the measure of quality control extends even further, as each tire must adhere to the highest of standards in order to be issued an airworthiness certificate, mandated in the U.S. by the Federal Aviation Administration.
We've got to be able to look the government in the eye at the end of the day and say this tire has met all the requirements that it met when we first qualified the tire, and it's not materially different from that tire.
When compared to pretty well any other category of tire, one of the most striking characteristics of an aircraft tire is its design. Absent are any signs of the elaborate patterns or thick blocks of tread found on many automotive tires. And instead, what's distinctive in the appearance of an aircraft tire is just how stripped down they appear to be, with little to characterize their appearance apart from a few uniform grooves tracing the circumference of the otherwise smoothed out rubber.
On the surface, they all look pretty much the same. They've got straight circumferential grooves. There's no siping. They're not blocky. Part of the reason we don't want that is, again, at the high speeds and pressures that these guys operate at, if you had a tread that's made of blocks, you hit the runway, those blocks are going to get torn off and chunked almost immediately. So functionally, we really can't afford to have those kind of features that reduce the noise and all the other good stuff that you have in your passenger car tires. But there is a lot of engineering that goes into the shape and placement of those grooves in any given tire. Our tire designers are constantly trying to optimize the water evacuation, heat dissipation, stresses in the contact patch, and they do that by designing the shape and placement of those grooves.
The longest standing technology in aircraft tires has been bias tires, which still make up a large percentage of those sold today, given that many older aircraft in service were specially designed for and certified with bias tires. And the process of retrofitting to a new technology is quite expensive. As introduced to aviation in 1981 by Michelin, the radial tire has provided a number of technological improvements, including a lighter weight and the ability to operate in cooler temperatures, adding up to an overall longer lifespan for each tire. For a company that's known first and foremost for the tires themselves, rather than those specific to aircraft, Michelin's history in aviation can actually be traced back much further and deeper than one might assume, as they not only produced a line of aircraft called the Breguet in the early 1900s, but they also created the world's first hard surface runway in 1908. Fast forward to the end of the century when Michelin provided specially designed single-use tires to NASA with the unique mission of landing the space shuttle. And in recent years, Michelin is responsible for yet another innovation in aircraft tire design in the form of near-zero growth, or NZG technology, providing yet another contribution to the world of aviation while striving to further improve one of its most critical components.
A big advantage of that near-zero growth technology is it reduces the stresses due to inflation and centrifugation, flattening out that profile, reducing the stresses, minimizing the risk of foreign object debris damage. So you can expect to get twice as many landings out of the NZG radial as opposed to the bias tire. The ring that we put around, the structural ring of the nylon and aramid hybrid, constrains the growth in the center and flattens out the contact patch. Basically, a larger contact patch helps to even out the stresses in that contact patch and allows us to get longer life out of the tires.